All right, I'm going to do my full wide receiver rankings, top 30 for exclusively autograph every single week. In this week, we will go through 13 through 30 because my first 12 posted on TikTok as always. 13, we have Deebo Samuel against Minnesota. They obviously utilize him more when McCaffrey's out. He had, 12 targets, something like that, a rushing touchdown. Because of his versatility, he's the wide receiver I want on the 49ers this week, even though they'll probably target Ayuk more with that secondary being, I feel like, a little bit weaker, obviously, than their defensive line. So Ayuk is still 20th, as you can see there, but I do think Deebo feasts. Purdy has a better game through the air. I'm thinking, he throws a pick, but I'm also thinking 2 or 3 touchdowns and 350 passing yards for Purdy. Malik Neighbors at 14 against Washington. Unpopular one right there because a lot of people are out on Malik Neighbors after last week. He did have 12 fantasy points, okay? He had 10 targets. He had a lot of targets, 6 catches, 67 yards, led the team, whatever that, I think his line was very similar to that. They're going to be playing from behind a lot of times this season, and therefore Neighbors is always going to be getting targets. It's can Jones get it to him? That's the big question. I think he does against Washington's defense this week. Metcalf against New England. Metcalf had a brutal game against Pat Surtain. I was wrong about him. I ranked him pretty high last week. They didn't get him involved. Ryan Grubb's still getting acclimated to the NFL level. That's their offensive coordinator. I think he's going to get Metcalf involved even against Christian Gonzalez and these great corners, or at least, a few solid ones that the New England Patriots have. Marvin Harrison Jr. will have a bounce-back game against the Los Angeles Rams. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I do think he scores his first NFL touchdown and at least gets 7 to 9 targets. I'm all in on him this week, bouncing back. Despite the controversy, Kyler came out and said it wasn't like, it's not my job to get him the ball. It kind of is, and I'm sure the front office is going to tell him that. DJ Moore versus Houston. I know that Jalen Johnson's probably going to be on him, but that's why he falls 17 on this list, but I'm expecting around 15 fantasy points for him. I really do. Drake London around the same, 15. I think he scores a touchdown, gets 4 catches for about 45 yards and a touchdown, puts him right in that realm. Philly's secondary is not that good. We saw that against Green Bay. I don't care with the new additions of Cooper DeJean, and they got Quinion. Quinion played pretty well, but so did DeJean. But I still think you can exploit them passing the football, and I think they will. Kirk will undoubtedly play better. Chris Olave, I know it says Olive. It obviously auto-corrected. Forgive me for that, but Dallas is really, really good, okay? But Chris Olave is going to get more targets because they will not be ahead 47 to 10. He was cut out of the game script by the second quarter because they were up by so many touchdowns, right? Ayuk, like I mentioned, Minnesota. This is one a lot of people hate, but Christian Kirk kills man coverage. Cleveland plays a ton of man coverage, some of the most in the league. This is not a BTJ game, Brian Thomas Jr. This is a Christian Kirk game. Trevor Lawrence, I think, gets 2 touchdowns. I think one of them at least goes to Christian Kirk, probably the other Evan Ingram. Devontae Adams versus Baltimore, tough matchup, but they're going to have to get him 15 targets. I'm sure Antonio Pierce and him had conversations. They didn't target him enough last week. Tank Dell, I like the upside there against Chicago. I do think he has closer to 15 fantasy points. Everybody in this range is between 10 and 15. I do think it's probably like 1 catch, a 40-yard touchdown. He probably has 3 catches on the day. Volatile wide receiver room there with Stephon Diggs as well, who's right after him against Chicago. I like Chicago's defense, but I think both of them are kind of in that 10 to 15 fantasy point realm. Obviously, both won't finish there if especially if Nico Collins, who I have ranked 12th, finishes higher. But that's adequate range of where they'll be on a week-to-week basis with how volatile that room is. We go down the list. Ladd McConkey, love his matchup against Carolina. Chris Godwin against Detroit, I like that matchup. Amari Cooper, I don't love against Jacksonville, but he's Amari Cooper. I do expect them to target him more than last week. Khalil Shakir versus Miami, love that tonight on Thursday Night Football. Jaden Reed versus Indianapolis. Malik Willis is the quarterback, otherwise he'd be higher. He was the wide receiver 1 last week. And Deontay Johnson versus the Chargers, I do expect 6-7 catches from him, around 11 fantasy points. No touchdown, though. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure you tap in on Autograph every single week for wide receiver and RB full rankings.